All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for attending. Today is Friday, July 30th. This is the Energy Services Coalition Georgia chapter quarterly meeting. That's the schedule that we adjusted or just agreed to adjust to given the realities of COVID-19, the current environment, and so on. I want to welcome everybody and say thanks for your attendance. Thanks to all the attendees. I think we had over, I'm trying to watch the numbers here as I go. I think we had over 30 registrants. Um, Thanks, of course, to the presenters. Some of the technical glitches that we're working out is getting the presenters into the meeting, but we'll build it while we fly it here. And finally, thanks, of course, to the executive committee, Melissa Hargrove, Walter Reed, and Tim Van Horn for their work in supporting the chapter. As we start the meeting here, I want to kick off with a couple safety topics. Those of you in and around the metro area have realized how warm it has become here in recent weeks. And so just remind everybody to take frequent breaks, to hydrate, to stay hydrated, and remind your peers and colleagues to do the same. My second topic is, of course, we are approaching the beginning of the 2021-2022 school year. And so ask everyone just to make sure that you are mindful of the increasing amount of children out and about and the change to the driving habits that we see with the school year, folks rushing to get to that carpool lane before it cuts off, rushing to or driving pretty slow as that might happen as well. The agenda that we had for today, we're looking at talking about, of course, this is a chapter meeting, and so I'm going to keep pressing this, as you all have, and we're monitoring the chat windows, we are monitoring the Q&A. As you, and Tim, I see your note. Thanks. I'll make sure and do that in a moment. As you have questions and discussion points you want to raise, I mean, we've got a lot of folks already, upwards of 20 here in the meeting so far. So we want to make sure that it's not a free-for-all. We try to be as orderly as possible. So as you have discussion points, things that you want to bring up, feel free to drop them either in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll make sure that those points are added to the discussion. Give everybody an opportunity to participate as much as we can. And so I'll remind everybody of that as we go on. Looking here at our agenda, we're gonna do something new. I'm not sure when Kathy Robb was running the chapter if she utilized I've seen this in other chapters as well, sort of this technology spotlight. And so we polled the community, the local community here, any particular sort of non-commercial sort of technology showcase that folks might find interesting, as well as any events or happenings and so on that someone wanted to join us and speak to. We open that up, and we're going to hear from someone on that front, the technology spotlight. We had also anticipated hearing some energy efficiency programming updates from the state perspective, right, from the Georgia Environmental and Finance Authority. I'm working on finding out how to get Chris in here. He sent over his information, but neither here nor there. We'll work on that. And finally, we have a special visitor, Tim Unruh from the National Association of Energy Services Companies. They and their cohort have been conducting extensive research and analysis on, I'm not going to give too much of the game away, research and analysis on some of the bills and the chatter and the regs coming out of the federal government. So Tim's been kind enough to share his time with us this morning to discuss some of that research and the implications for the work that we all do in the energy efficiency, energy management space. Checking back here, I see that, all right, I see that neither our technology showcase partner nor our Sanderson hasn't joined. So, Tim, we might jump right to you if you're all right with that. I'm going to enable you as a presenter. I've got your slide deck up, but I know when we do these, it's always awkward to do the next. So, so let's see here. I was just looking at that option and it seems to have disappeared on me. No. Let's see what we got here. So let's stop my screen share and see if I can get that turned on. Gosh, you think after doing this for over a year, I would have it figured out by now, but you know, here we are. Okay, let's do that. Meeting controls. All right, Tim, what I'll do is just make you the host then. How about that?
Okay.
All right, so we have just done that. You should be in good shape.
Wonderful. If all is working with the Zoom gods, you will be seeing my screen. Is that correct?
Yes, we see it. Thank you.
That's great. It's great to be here with you all today. And wonderful to have George have me present here at the Georgia ESC chapter meeting. You know, it seemed like it's so long ago that I got to come down in person to your meeting down there in downtown Atlanta, George, and I look forward to getting to come down to another one. It seems as though our COVID is here and then gone and now come back again. So what wonderful times we have. But let's get right on to the presentation here. So just to make sure everyone knows who NAESCO is we are the trade association for the energy service companies. Our membership consists of energy service companies and affiliates, which are those that supply goods and services to the energy service companies. We're about 120 members. We really have grown a lot, even through the pandemic. And our members are telling us that they're pretty busy these days, fulfilling a lot of work. And we'll talk about some of the stimulus money and how it's affecting the industry. ESCOs, as you know, have done a lot of work over the years. And while efficiency began the industry, really we do a lot in renewable energy and other sustainable technologies, reliability, resiliency, cybersecurity, all those areas are really growing substantially. And NAESCO does maintain the accreditation ESCO certification that is an important part for customers to understand what type of quality they can expect from their energy service company. And I'd be remiss if I did not plug my own annual meeting coming up November 9 through 12 in Austin, Texas. We'll be in downtown Austin coming up in November. We do have kind of a bifurcated session this year. This year we have kind of the first day is a lot of policy information. The second day we're going to have some continuing education classes. So if you need those, we should be able to offer you, I think, about 6 continuing education credits for that second day. And we've got some pretty interesting technologies we've picked out for that. So it should be very interesting. So make sure to put that on your calendar, and the registration is already open. So federal spending due to COVID. You know, there's been a lot of bills passed. So last March I'm getting my years messed up now. It must be Friday. Last March of 2020, we had a $13.5 billion bill that went to schools. Then in December, we had another bill passed that provided some money for schools, and that added another $54 billion. And then we had March of 2021, we had a bill passed that had money for schools, had $122 billion. And then that last one, the American Rescue Plan, also had some money for state and local government. But of all the money that's been passed for schools, about $175 billion or so, there's been a lot of that money going towards ventilation and facility improvement. And so that directly impacts our industry. There have been some challenges with ESCOs getting access to that money, but we have heard some success stories of it working quite well. I think my estimate is that about $25 billion of that $175 billion will probably go towards school facilities. And then, as I mentioned, also with the March 2021 American Rescue Plan, there was a state and local government fund that was created. The school fund was called ESSER, which obviously we have to have an acronym for it, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief. The state and local fund is called the Fiscal Recovery Fund. And they've just been calling Fiscal Recovery Fund, no acronym for that one. While the schools fund is administered by the U.S. Department of Education, the Fiscal Recovery Funds are administered by the Department of Treasury. It is $350 billion total, and states should get about 195 of that billion, of that 350 billion. Counties about 65 billion, and cities about 45 billion. These funds are available to spend until December 31, 2024. Now, that American Rescue Plan was a much larger bill. That bill included 1.9 trillion. And a lot of that stuff continues to make news today. Watching the news last night, they talked about 46 billion that was in that bill that was set aside for rent relief, to help those people who are behind on their rent and make that up. And that 46 billion, one of the things they talked about in the news was very little of it has been spent. And I think that's concerning, even with our funds, is that new infrastructure bill that we've all heard the Senate pass, that's a $1.2 trillion bill. Let's see if we've got it coming up here. I'm going to advance my slides inappropriately here. That bill, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, is about a $1.2 trillion bill. But what's interesting, they tell us it's only $550 billion of new spending. And the reason is that the new spending is coming from unspent COVID relief funds. So I'm going to go back here to where we were. And so one of the things we have to be careful about is the longer it takes us to get these COVID funds spent, the more people are eyeing them to spend on something else and move forward. So when you talk about that Senate bipartisan bill that we all hear about, it's 1.2 trillion of new spending, but only 550 billion of new money. And so we have to be careful about that. The fiscal recovery funds, the interim guidance came out from the Treasury on May 17th. And what they told us that they really wanted to use this for, and I'm going to summarize, you can read all these details which come right from that interim guidance. But in a nutshell, they want the money to be spent for whatever the state and local government feels will help them address COVID. They say that several times, they give some examples, but it appears as though they're trying to be very open and allow the interpretation to be done by the state and local government for them to create that justification of why they should spend the money in that way. And effectively, they have to justify that back up to Treasury in order to get the security of the funds. Talking about recent news on this as well, these fiscal recovery funds, if you listen to President Biden yesterday, he talked about encouraging state and local governments to give $100 if someone will go get a vaccine. And where that money comes from is from these fiscal recovery funds. And so then just after the president spoke yesterday, Treasury issued a notice that said that the state and local $350 billion that we just talked about is also available for that $100. And so I think that's another example that we have to be careful about, is as this money sits there longer and longer, it's being eyed for other purposes. And this, I think, is another purpose that wasn't originally envisioned, but now it's being called out. So I did a quick internet search just to see where stimulus funds in Georgia were going. And I found a few cases. On the bottom left, it says Georgia plan approved to spend $1.4 billion in fiscal school aid. I think if I read right, Georgia got somewhere around $4.7 billion in ESSER funds. And so this was the approval for the last $1.4 billion of them to do the spending and move that out to school districts. Upper left, it's Monroe County is going to use $5 million in federal funds to complete water line internet expansion projects. In the fiscal recovery funds, they specifically called out broadband and wastewater and water treatment facilities. So that's a clear cut use for that. And then finally, on the right side of the page is Albany passed a second and final budget after tense commissioner debate. And this was an interesting one. They want to use the money to repair Albany's sewers, but they really weren't sure that that was where the money was going to go. Fiscal recovery funds, NAESCO provided a couple of comments. So I thought that the fiscal recovery fund interim guidance was pretty clear in that ventilation issues were easily addressable by the funds. And so when I looked at the funds, one of the things that I saw happening across our members talked to me about that they were often repurposing facilities to make them available for other things. So in the pandemic and national emergencies, we often go to school districts and we want their gymnasiums for their high schools and middle schools for shelter in place. For community buildings, we see that they have multiple purposes now for vaccine distribution and so forth. And so I put in a comment that we should apply the fiscal recovery funds to adapt buildings for use in emergencies. And that might mean any type of a retrofit. The second one is to make sure that these funds have a comment that they are available to be mixed with public finance funds like ESPCs. I ran into a newspaper article this week in my own state. Washington Post says that Governor Northam here in Virginia is going to take $500 million of the fiscal recovery funds and apply those to school districts, with the school districts mixing in their ESSER funds to make the overall project work. And he thinks that with that $500 million combined with the ESSER funds, they'll be able to address all of the school ventilation issues in the state of Virginia. And it's important, though I bring this up, is that states have a broad leeway to use these funds. And this is just another example of that. So two packages are being talked about in the news. One is the bipartisan infrastructure package, and in the lobbying circles, they call that the BIF. And I have to tell you, every time I hear that word BIF, I just can't help but think of that guy on Back to the Future that bugs Marty McFly and is his nemesis the whole show. So every time I hear BIF, I just can't get that out of my head. But that's what they call it, the BIF. And then there's the reconciliation infrastructure funding, which is known as the RIF. So the BIF, they want to pass by getting Republicans and Democrats together in a bipartisan agreement. And that's the thing that just came out of committee 2 days ago. The RIF is the annual appropriations to Congress that would fund the government starting fiscal year October 1. And they've added additional infrastructure components to the reconciliation package. The BIF requires 60 votes to pass because it's a standard bill in the Senate. The RIF will take only 50 votes to pass. So House Speaker Pelosi has said, I want to receive the passed BIF in the House from the Senate, and then we'll consider the RIF. So what she's doing is she's making sure that they get a bipartisan package that has at least some components of an infrastructure. And then effectively she's saying that then the Democrats are going to single party pass the remaining portion of the infrastructure. But she wants to make sure before the Democrats do their piece that they get the bipartisan piece passed. It's a pretty precarious path. Who knows if it's going to go through, but that seems to be the plan right now of what they want to do. To give some idea here about the BIF, again, I talked about it being 1.2 trillion, 550 billion in new spending. But what's in it for our industry? It has a lot of stuff about trains, planes, roads, bridges, tunnels, and broadband, but that's not really what ESCOs do their work on. For what we do work on, there's $550 million for energy efficiency conservation block grants called EECBG, if you like the acronym. And those EECBG grants, the thing about those in the ARA spend, when they came out back in 2008, they did not allow the combination with performance contracts. So we've got a clause added in the BIF that allows performance contracting to be used with the EECBG. So that's a success for us. There's $500 million for K-12 schools over 5 years. This money goes through the Department of Energy rather than education, and it's made to be a competitive grant program where schools will make application. This is important for ESCOs because I think ESCOs can work with their districts to make application for this money to help their energy efficiency situation as well as address COVID. There's $250 million for the U.S. Department of Energy with the ASEC program, which is assisting federal facilities with energy conservation technologies. If you're doing work in the federal space, this will have a significant impact on federal work potential. There's $225 million for building codes. That's not going to address us, our industry specifically, but overall it does help us. And then there's the RIF. The RIF, remember we heard Sanders talk about a $6 trillion package. Its current size is $3.5 trillion. Just to give you a picture of how much more spending this is than normal budget package, normally we'd pass about a $1.2 trillion spending package. So this is $2.3 trillion more of spending towards infrastructure. Now the RIF is far less defined than the BIF. The RIF has things like a clean energy standard, which we're not quite sure what all that is yet. It has stuff about tax incentives. If you do 179D, it's a big boost for those tax incentives. Also has like a 25C tax incentive. I think there's another one called a 45C or something like that as well. And then there's also the clean energy credit. Again, that $3.5 trillion package, though, is completely in flux. We have been told that the Open Back Better Act that provides $20 billion to the ESCO industry is still a very hot potential to be included in that package. So we still hold out hope that there will be a significant piece in there for ESCOs. With that, I'm going to turn it back to George and see if there's any questions and see if we have other panelists have shown up to talk today. So George, I will stop sharing my screen and it's all yours again.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for that, Tim. I mean, couple questions here. You mentioned in the fiscal recovery funds, NAESCO and probably some others have submitted some comments. Has the Treasury or Department of Education indicated a willingness to take those comments, a time frame for addressing them?
Yeah, so the comments were due July 16th, I think it was, and they certainly are interested. It's part of the rulemaking process. As a former government employee, the process is that when Congress passes a law, you as an agency make a rulemaking. You kind of put together a big write-up of what you think Congress told you. You send that out to the public, and you'll get thousands upon thousands upon thousands. I would bet they get tens of thousands of comments for the Treasury rule. And then they're required to go through and address each one of them. And the attorneys will review it with them. They'll determine what the potential is, and then they'll issue their final rule based on what they think that the public said. So they're certainly willing to get those. We just don't know how they'll take the comments we provided.
Okay. Thanks for that. Is there anything, I mean, I know we've got a number of advocates here in the audience or the attendees, as well as the organizations that they represent. Is there any advice, guidance you'd give to them on the BIF and the RIF?
Well, obviously there's not much you can do on the BIF and the RIF yet. The BIF is closer to law now, but let's say closer means that if you've got this far to go, maybe they've moved a pinky inch here, and that's it. And the distance yet to go, it's kind of like walking halfway to the exit of the room every 5 minutes. You never actually get there. That's what it feels like is happening with these bills. But there's hope that the BIF will pass. If the BIF does pass, then I think they should be looking to work with their school districts to try to get access to that $500 million of grant money. It's going to be highly competitive. If you think about it, $500 million over 5 years is $100 million a year, over 50 states, and think of how many school districts are in each state. Now you begin to understand how trivial a $500 million piece is. Now, if they wanted to give $500 million to George, to you and I, that would be a significant amount for us. But when you start to spread it across 50 states and all the school districts, it becomes chump change.
Right, and this notion of an application process, competitive grants. Right. I mean, that I recall in the ARA days, all of the different skins and flavors to those applications and what was successful and what was deemed non-fundable and so on. So it sounds like when and if that passes, folks are going to have their work cut out for them going after those funds. That's
right. And even the structure of that is unknown. So we don't know if that passes, if the Department of Energy will make that grant available to a state education authority, and they'll do those grants on a statewide basis, or if they'll make it available to individual school districts to apply. We just don't know that yet.
Okay, thanks so much. A reminder to everyone, if you've got questions, enter them in the chat or the Q&A. I don't see any here, not yet. So what we'll do is we'll welcome Chris. I see he was able to get in. Sorry again, everybody, for technical challenges we had. I'm going to turn this over to Chris and allow him to, or ask him rather, to bring up his slide deck and give us some exciting info on what's going on in the state. Again, I'll give, I guess, a final plug while Chris is getting set up. Please take a look at the NAESCO website and consider attending one of those events. I will probably be there later this year, so hope to see some or all of you. But looks like Chris is ready to go, so we'll let him take it away. Thank you.
All right, thanks, George. And thanks, Tim, for that update from NAESCO. Apologize for joining late. Had a bit of a calendar snafu with this one for some reason. But glad I could get in and give a little update. The federal funding, I mean, that's probably as good of a lead-in as anything. That's obviously things that we're monitoring there as it currently stands. I know within the bipartisan infrastructure bill, there are some pools of funding that would likely go to our office as the state energy office. So that's something that we're very much interested in within the state energy program, low-income weatherization, and EECBG, as Tim mentioned, and potentially some other things that might impact us, like building codes. So we're monitoring both those bills, and we'll just see what comes out and what it does for the state of Georgia. So again, I'm Chris Anderson. I think I know probably a lot of folks on the room. I am now the Energy Resources Director here at GEFA, which is the state energy office. I know some of you knew David Gibson, my previous boss. He is still with us at GEFA. He's moved over to run our water resources division. And that obviously could be impacted as well with the bipartisan infrastructure bill or the reconciliation bill. We know water infrastructure is a priority, and I know that's a priority for a lot of folks on this call as well. So, so that's something that we're interested in monitoring too. So we'll see. So with that being said, we are in the process of hopefully hiring someone new to come onto our energy team. And hopefully that someone will be involved in the performance contracting program. We're going to be interviewing for that over the next couple of weeks. And so we'll see how that works out. I'll still obviously be involved in the program, and it'll probably be a bit of a, depending on who we hire, a bit of a long glide path to get them fully up to speed on our program and get them involved. But you'll likely be having some outreach from hopefully a new staff member over the coming months. So looking forward to that, but obviously I'll still be around, so feel free to reach out to me at any time. So moving on, I wanted to give just a little bit of an update on our program, where we're at, some things that we're thinking about going forward. First off, here are our existing projects that I just wanted to mention, kind of where we're at with them. And I hope y'all can see this slide, correct?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, good. This is a list of all the projects that we've had to date. I know some folks in the call are familiar with them. It's a total of 8 projects dating back to about 2014. The most recent project that we've executed was the Georgia Tech project with ABM. And I don't actually have the savings numbers on that slide. I know we have them for the first year. But what I want to do is just put this together with each agency that's been involved, the ESCO that's been involved, who the lender is, what the term is, and the overall contract values, and then whatever our most recent year of realized savings is compared to the guaranteed savings. Some of these projects are getting a little bit closer to being done. I think we look back to the round that we did in 2015 and early 2016. We have a couple of 7-year projects, term projects on that at Georgia Tech and UGA. Those are getting close to their final year of guaranteed savings. So that's, I think, exciting. And then we've got some that are going to be out there for quite a while longer. We did have a project we were working on with Augusta University. Unfortunately, that one, after the investment grade audit, decided not to move forward. So that one is at this point not happening. We didn't get any applications over this past winter for new projects for the current fiscal year. I'm hopeful that we'll get some for the next fiscal year. But yeah, so these are our current ones. Just want to throw that out there. If anyone has any questions on any of these in particular, I'm happy to go into more detail about them. We collect all of the measurement and verification reports each year. That's a requirement of our program that it's done each year of the life of the contract. And then agencies have to report that to us by October, well, really in September, and then we report it to the Georgia State Finance and Investment Commission by October 1st each year. So we have all of that data. If anyone wants more info on an individual project, we can pull it together for them, whatever they might be interested in. So if anyone has specific questions on any of those, I'm happy to take those next. Wanted to talk for a couple of minutes on where we're at with some priorities. We, as I mentioned, are looking for new applications for projects by sometime this winter. I mean, ideally, we look at March as kind of the ideal deadline for that, because then we have to work with the Georgia State Finance and Investment Commission to get it on their calendar for approval for their meeting that happens usually every June. So that gives us a little bit of time there. We're interested in doing some state agency outreach, especially once we hopefully add to our team and do a little bit of reconfiguring there. I really want to get back and have that start happening a little bit more regularly.
Chris, if I may jump in, I think you're speaking to the next slide. You want to advance?
Oh, did it not move over? Okay. No. Let's see. Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So a couple of things that I've talked about a little bit, I think, on this call and to some other energy service providers, is that one of our goals is to expand our local government outreach. That's been on my list of things to do for this summer. I've got a little bit more on my plate at the moment, so I don't have any progress update on that for now, but it's still very much on our radar to do over coming months. And that's to a couple of things there. I mean, we want to make some of our resources, like our standard contract templates, more applicable to local governments so that they can take those and use those a little bit easier. Right now, we've always told them that they can pull our state contracts and then modify them however they want and use those as a template. But we're going to be working with our legal folks to try and tweak them a little bit more specifically for local governments so they don't have to do as much work there. We think there's some opportunity there to make that a little easier. We put into our budget for the coming year an effort to provide local governments with some financial assistance on outside third-party assistance to help them through the performance contracting process. We don't have the resources internally like some other states do to be kind of their advocate or their independent reviewer as they go through the process, but we do want to find a way to help provide some assistance there. So that is still very much in our program goals for the coming year to develop some sort of system there. I'm hopeful that if it goes well, it's something that we can offer, every year going forward, as long as we have funding for it. And that, so that, I don't know exactly how that's going to look yet, but it will be something along the lines of providing financial assistance to some sort of third-party support that can help a local government through procurement and then through an investment grade audit phase of their project. So more coming on that, and more coming, as we fill out our team again and reassign some of these things. So we do have an RFQ out right now for our new pre-qualification period for energy service providers. That was posted earlier in the spring. I know we've had some come in so far, and we're working on getting through those. I'd encourage all the previously pre-qualified ESCOs to take a look at it if you haven't seen it. In reality, there hasn't been a real time crunch to get it done because we don't have a new project to go out to market right now. And we likely won't until probably in the spring. So it hasn't been an emergency to get that list publicized, but anyone who hasn't sent in their qualifications, please take a look. It's basically the same as it always has been. We just want updated information, updated certifications, updated project lists. Get that in, and we'll do our best to turn that around and update the list. I know some folks like to have that not just applying to state projects, but for reference for local market work as well. So let me know if you have any questions about that, and I'm happy to talk to you more about it. And as I mentioned, we annually report on all of our projects, so we'll be getting more of those in over the next 2 months, and then putting out a new report to GEFA by October 1, and happy to share some of that data as we get it as well. So that's all I had planned to go over. I'm happy to take any questions that anyone has, or any feedback that they have on the program. So.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I mean, just a few, I see a couple questions here, and I've got one of my own. In terms of the COVID relief funding, the BIF and the RIF that Tim discussed with us, is there anything you can share about state advocacy or strategy on, at least from your office's perspective, on any of those bills, any of that funding?
Yeah, we don't lobby typically, so our posture right now is just to kind of sit back and see what happens in Congress and see what the final text of the bills is. There's a lot up in the air at this point. There's likely to be some funding that will come to us directly by law, in the bill, but we really don't know what that is, and we don't lobby for it. So it's hard for me to say much else about that. If we do get a big chunk of money through the state energy program or EECBG, then we'll start planning and see what's in the bill, see what the requirements are, what strings might be attached to that funding, and then start developing program concepts as to how we're going to spend that money and what the needs are out there. I'm sure once, if anything passes, we'll probably get inundated with folks, providing their feedback on how they think we should spend it. But we'll also probably be doing some sort of stakeholder process to figure that out as well.
Okay, thanks for that.
And I can't really comment to what is going to go through, what could go through Department of Education or other state agencies. We're just kind of waiting to see.
Understood. Thank you. You'd mentioned you're going through the list of projects, talked about Augusta University, and that was a project that had gone through the investment grade audit phase, but failed to convert over into a construction project. For the attendees, I mean, who our group is made up of. It's ESCOs, it's vendors supplying ESCOs. What are some of the and I know I'm not asking you to get into the weeds and the specifics, but overall lessons learned, are there any takeaways, again, from the perspective of your office on how that whole deal went down or didn't go down, depending on how you look at it?
Sure. So that, I don't know, I'd be a little careful, I guess, how I describe it. At the end of the day, the parties involved weren't really able to, I think, make the case strong enough to university leadership that it was the best idea to go forward with the project. I think there was a recognition that the project, the ECMs, were beneficial, and some of it was likely going to need to happen at some point, no matter what. The administration just wasn't convinced that the best way to tackle those concerns was through a performance contract. We met with university administration a couple of times over the course to try and explain to them the program, the process, the pros of going through a performance contracting process, also what some of the downsides are, and be transparent about that. I mean, I think people know, we view our job here at GEFA as the program administrator. You know, we're not lobbying for everybody to do performance contracts, but we certainly want to support those that want to go through the process. There are a lot of pros to it, but there are also, you know, some things that agencies are wary of. I mean, we try to be transparent about that. I think it was a good project. I think ABM, you know, did a great job of working with the agency or with the university. I think the facilities staff worked very hard at doing what they could. One thing I will say is a lesson learned, you know, not all universities here or in any other state are the same. And that's certainly true in their facilities department. Some of our universities have a lot more staff and a lot more people who can work on these kinds of projects and move them forward, and other ones don't. And I think we need to be really aware of that when we're working with a agency or a university on that. And that's not at all to say anything negative about the staff at the university who are working on the project, because I think they did everything they could. I just think, you know, that there's different level of resources in different schools. And, you know, they were stretched pretty thin. So that was a challenge. You know, there was bad timing too. Some of it I think was just bad luck. COVID obviously hit during the process, and it was at a medical college, right? Medical university. And so they were getting pulled in a different direction all the time, just trying to get through the day and meet the demand for what they had to do for COVID, whether it was testing or, you know, laboratory space and research, or, you know, treating patients in the hospital. So that was a really big challenge for the facility staff over there. I think there was a lot of disruption because they were getting pulled in different directions for, you know, logical reasons due to COVID. So that was tough. And, you know, at the end of the day, they just, the administration had to make a decision, and they decided not to move forward with it at this time. So that's where we were left.
Sure. Thanks for that insight there. Final question. I mean, you were talking about some of the priorities moving forward, sort of this providing resources to local governments and other non-state agencies that are within the state. One of the things or elements that you mentioned was looking at the current form of the agreement, the performance contracting agreement itself, and making changes to that for those non-state entities. What types of sections? I mean, I think specific articles, but what are some of the subheaders, if you will, focus areas that might see changes? And maybe it's too early to tell, but that was a question. I throw that out there.
Yeah, it's too early for me to tell at this point. We don't really want to change the intent of our contracts, so I wouldn't expect substantial changes. Mm-hmm. We need to sit down with either our Special Assistant Attorney General and go over it line by line and see from their perspective where we can make changes for local governments. Or also we're in the process of bringing on an internal legal counsel director as well. So I'm not quite sure which path we'll take there, but we don't want to really change the intent of it, but our thought is to make it a better template for local governments so that they don't have to change as much to take it from, you know, state language to language for a local government in the state. So that's to be determined. If anyone has specific things that they would like to see changed, you know, you can let me know, but I will say that, you know, keep in mind, we're just not looking to change dramatically on the intent.
Sure. And have you been talking to local governments and other folks about what may be coming? I mean, I realize you mentioned it's still in development and we're not sure how far it's going to go, but
Mhm.
are you receiving any feedback from those folks?
We talk periodically to local governments, and we talk about the resources that we have available. We don't have a lot of follow-up with them once they start the process, unfortunately. So that's something that we're looking to improve. We've mentioned our goals to do this work in a couple of different forums, and I think some forums that have had local governments on them. But that's always a challenge for us is where can we get in front of the target audience? We have a lot of local governments in the state of Georgia.
Sure.
How do we get to them? So yeah, I don't have an answer for that other than we want to keep plugging away at it. And I'm hopeful also that with the third-party assistance, financial support, that can give us a little bit more of an inroad into the process.
Sure. Okay. Great. And thanks for that. Thanks for that, Chris. I am watching the chat and the Q&A. It doesn't look like there are any questions here. So either everyone did one hell of a job presenting, or all the attendees are ready to get on with their half day and jump into the weekend. And thanks, Chris. Thanks, Tim, so much. We had our technology showcase join. So Nick, if you are ready, I'll turn the host duties over to you. And this may be sort of gone in reverse order. Maybe you colluded to do this on purpose just to keep me on my toes. But we'll turn it over to Nick as the host here.
Thank you so much, George. And let me share a quick document with the team here. Again, apologies for the confusion on the calendar, but I want to introduce my company, SinglePoint, and a collaboration that we did with a municipality and an energy service company in Georgia. Last year, we partnered with an NAESCO, and they were engaged in a performance contract with a large municipality in Georgia. And what they wanted us to do is to come in and find OpEx cost savings as it relates to information and communication technologies and telecom spend within across the municipality. What a lot of people don't realize is that telecom is a somewhat deregulated utility. There are multiple options, and it's a line item of spend that everyone is paying for, but most are not looking at. And in the case of this municipality, when we went in and we did an optimization assessment, we uncovered significant savings to the tune of $57,000 a month in OpEx reduction in spend. And that is because there was multiple phone lines that the municipality was paying for. They were being billed for, but they were not even active. We renegotiated internet costs, phone line costs, existing contracts down. We competitively sourced that across multiple vendors. And then once we uncovered the savings, we then circled back with the ESCO and said, hey, here's how much savings that the municipality can attain by implementing these new contracts or these new negotiated rates, et cetera. What that came to is $57,000 in monthly savings. That also included a brand new technology platform across the municipality. Look, this is a home run. We don't find this everywhere we go. But what we are seeing trend-wise is municipalities and local governments are overspending on telecom. So that's internet, phone systems, phone maintenance systems, hardware costs, et cetera, contracted monthly expenses between 30 and 40%. K through 12s, which we've done multiple K through 12 audits as well, some in California and across the Southeast, school districts are overspending by about 20%. And so if you look at the body of work and what we're uncovering as we press into the MUSH market, here are some project results. On average, the MUSH market is overspending what we're seeing by about 34% as it relates to telecom. And what's interesting here is that this is an expense that is largely overlooked by everyone. And so most ESCOs are walking in and helping customers find energy and cost savings and kind of the wages, water, air, gas, electricity, and spend. What we're encouraging you to do is to maybe look and go one step further and look for what we would say is those non-traditional spend items, because there's significant savings here. And what the ESCO is able to do is leverage this savings back into their performance contract with the customer, to do more investment as stipulated savings. And so what we wanted to do is just call attention to what we're doing and what we've found with other ESCO companies across the country. And in the state of Georgia, we've done this project, and we're actually in the process of implementing all of these recommended savings items as well. George, I know I was late to the party here, but at a very high level, there is significant opportunity on OPEX savings outside of those wages categories as it relates to telecom. I know that was fast, and I know I'm late, so I wanted to make sure I was diligent with time, George.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, it sounds very interesting. I mean, it's just anything that, I mean, I'm always an advocate. Me personally, I'm not going to try to speak for everybody else, but personally, I'm certainly an advocate for anything that advances efficiency, minimizes waste, be it direct energy waste, operational cost waste, and can be verified and become an actual reduced cost. I'm always a fan. So I do appreciate it. It's a dog whistle to me, Nick. I'll tell you, I heard the word stipulated savings, and I'm glad my video is off, because I surely had this big frown. But I'm not gonna try to put you on the spot here. I'm sure you guys are doing great stuff, and thanks for stepping up to be our technology showcase here. I mean, the executive committee, we talked about giving everybody a chance. I say giving everybody a chance. Talked about opening a forum so that folks in our community could hear about, again, events and technologies that that we may not be aware of. So thanks again for that. Let's see here. Let's see. I think there was one more question. I say question, really housekeeping. Chris and Tim, well, all of you, really, you've provided information. I know someone's going to ask if they can get a copy, receive a copy of any of those presentations. If we were to post those to the chapter website, would that be an issue?
You can post mine.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, you can post mine.
Great. And Nick, I guess if you want to, I mean, I'm thinking of yours as more of a case study. If you want to put some, some of the dirty details in there and take some commercial credit, we'll post that to the case study section of the website. But thank you, Chris and Tim, for allowing us to post your content. I'm looking at the time here, and it brings a big smile to my face because we're on time. I don't see any more questions in the chat and so on. And so thanks again to everybody for attending. Special thanks to Nick, Chris, and Tim for attending and sharing information with us. I hope it was insightful. Again, thanks to the executive committee, Melissa, Walter, and Tim Van Horn for their work. Be on the lookout. We're moving these meetings to, again, a quarterly format. I think I should plug the ESC Market Transformation Conference in Austin in September. I don't have those exact dates. Please check the website if you're interested in attending. Our next meeting will be approximately 1 quarter from now. If you have case studies and other things you'd like to share with the market, please send them in. If you have topics that you'd like to see on the next quarterly meeting agenda, please send them in as well, and we'll do our best to accommodate. But with that, we will adjourn the meeting. Thanks again. Have a wonderful weekend.